What if I told you that love, the thing poets praise, wars are fought over, and men die for, is now being abandoned by modern men? Not because they've grown weak, but because they've discovered something far more powerful that Dostoevsky himself foresaw. Within the next minutes, you'll uncover why an entire generation of men is walking away from love not in defeat, but in cold, calculated triumph. And by the end, you might just do the same. There was a time when love was worth dying for. Men built empires, composed symphonies, and spilled blood across battlefields, all for a woman's glance. But today, a quiet revolution is unfolding. Men are no longer kneeling at the altar of love. Instead, they're choosing peace, a deep, unshakable solitude over the chaos of romance. And Dostoevsky, the prophet of human suffering, saw this coming over a century ago. Picture this. A man in his late 20s, let's call him Alex. He's not a monk, he's not broken, he's sharp, successful, and by all accounts, desirable. Yet he refuses to date. No late-night texts, no desperate validation seeking, no bending over backwards for a woman's fleeting attention. His friends call him cold. Society calls him lost. But Alex, he's never been more at peace. This isn't an anomaly, it's an epidemic. Studies from the Pew Research Center reveal that nearly 63% of men under 30 are single, compared to just 34% of women in the same age group. The gap isn't just widening, it's a chasm. But why? Because modern men have stumbled upon a brutal truth. Love, as sold to them, is a rigged game. Dostoevsky wrote in Notes from the Underground, "I say let the world go to hell, but I should always have my tea." A seemingly simple line, yet it captures the essence of this male awakening. Men are realizing that the pursuit of love, with its endless sacrifices, emotional landmines, and conditional rewards, isn't just exhausting, it's degrading. And when degrading is the price of affection, only a fool keeps paying. But this isn't just philosophical musing, history backs it up. Consider the samurai monks of Japan, the Yamabushi. These warriors abandoned society, relationships, and even their names to seek enlightenment in the mountains. They didn't do this because they were weak, they did it because they understood a fundamental truth. A man at peace is more dangerous than a man in love. Or take the case of Nikola Tesla, a genius who deliberately chose celibacy, believing romantic entanglements would dilute his focus. He wasn't lonely, he was free. And in that freedom, he changed the world. So what's really happening here? Modern men aren't giving up on love because they've failed. They're giving up because they've succeeded in seeing through the illusion. They've recognized that love in its current form is a transaction where they're always the losing party. And once a man sees the game, he can't unsee it. But this is just the beginning, because what if the male withdrawal from love isn't a surrender, but a silent war? Now we'll expose how society's panicking over the shift and why the most powerful men in history never needed love to begin with. Stay with me because what you're about to hear will rewrite everything you thought you knew about desire.
There's a scene in Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov where the elder Zosima says, "The world will be saved by beauty." But what happens when men no longer believe in the beauty the world is selling? What happens when they turn away, not in anger, but in indifference? That's when the real panic begins. Right now, there's a quiet hysteria brewing in the halls of power. Governments, corporations, media, all whispering the same question. Why are men checking out? Birth rates are collapsing, marriage rates are in freefall, and the most dangerous demographic, young, capable, intelligent men, are walking away from the script they were supposed to follow. They're not protesting, they're not demanding change, they're simply leaving. And that silence is louder than any revolution. Consider the case of Japan's herbivore men, a generation of males who rejected the traditional grind of corporate slavery and romantic pursuit. At first, they were mocked. Then, they were studied. Now, they're feared. Because when men stop competing for status and sex, the entire system trembles. The Japanese government even launched campaigns to encourage dating, as if love were a tax to be paid rather than a feeling to be experienced. But the men didn't budge. They had tasted something more valuable than validation: autonomy. This isn't just happening in Japan. Across the West, a similar phenomenon is unfolding. The men going their own way, MGTOW movement, though controversial, is just the visible edge of a much deeper shift. Men are opting out, not because they hate women, but because they've run the numbers and realized the cost of participation is higher than the reward. And when the reward is a fleeting dopamine hit from a dating app match or the hollow title of husband in a system that despises masculinity, the rational choice is to fold. Dostoevsky understood this instinct better than anyone. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov doesn't kill the pawnbroker. He does it to see if he can, to test his own freedom. Modern men aren't committing crimes, but they are conducting their own experiments. What happens if I stop chasing? What happens if I focus solely on myself? The answer? They become unstoppable. History is littered with men who thrived outside the system. Michelangelo never married. Newton died a virgin. Kant lived his entire life in disciplined solitude. These weren't losers. They were titans who understood that the greatest creations, the deepest thoughts, the most enduring legacies often came from men who refused to dilute their energy in the circus of romance. But here's where it gets even darker. Society doesn't just disapprove of these men, it fears them. Because a man who doesn't need love is a man who can't be controlled. Governments need taxpayers. Corporations need consumers. The media needs addicts. And all of these systems rely on one thing: men chasing something they're told they want, but can never truly have. Think about it. What's the easiest way to keep a man docile? Give him a woman to impress, a mortgage to pay, and a future to fear losing. But strip those away, suddenly he's dangerous. Suddenly he's free. And that's exactly what's happening now. Men are waking up to the fact that the things they were taught to desire, love, marriage, family, were never the end goal. They were the leash. But what if the peaceful man isn't the end of society, but the birth of something far stronger? Now, we'll expose the hidden power of solitude and why the greatest men in history didn't just walk away from love, they transcended it. What's coming will rewrite your definition of strength.
There is a moment in every man's life when he realizes he has been lied to, not by a person, but by the world itself. It's the moment he understands that the things he was told would fulfill him, romance, validation, the approval of others, were never the answer. They were distractions. And once that illusion shatters, something terrifying and magnificent happens. He stops needing anything at all. Dostoevsky wrote in Demons, "Man is unhappy because he doesn't know he's happy." It's a paradox, but one that explains the modern male exodus from love. Men aren't abandoning relationships because they're bitter. They're leaving because they've glimpsed a truth most never see, that happiness was never out there to begin with. It was always within. And once a man tastes that kind of self-sufficiency, no woman, no society, no force on earth can drag him back to his knees. Consider the story of Diogenes, the ancient philosopher who lived in a barrel. When Alexander the Great, the most powerful man in the world, approached him and asked him if he wanted anything, Diogenes simply replied, "Yes, stand out of my sunlight." That wasn't arrogance, it was the purest form of freedom. Diogenes had stripped his life down to the bare essentials, and in doing so, he became untouchable. No king, no army, no lover could threaten his peace, because he needed nothing. This is the secret modern men are uncovering. Not that love is evil, but that dependence on it is slavery. And once that dependency is severed, a man's potential becomes limitless. History's most formidable figures understood this.
Bruce Lee famously said, "The key to immortality is first living a life worth remembering." And how did he live? Not chasing affection, but honing his craft with monastic discipline. Steve Jobs, in his final years, reflected that his biggest regret wasn't missing out on love, it was not deepening his focus sooner. Even science backs this up. A 2023 study published in the Journal of Positive Psychology found that single men, contrary to popular belief, reported higher levels of life satisfaction than their married counterparts. Why? Because they spent more time on self-improvement, creative pursuits, and deep work, activities that generate lasting fulfillment, not fleeting dopamine hits. Meanwhile, married men reported higher stress, lower testosterone, and a pervasive sense of unspoken resentment. The data doesn't lie. The traditional path to happiness is a myth. But this revelation isn't just about personal peace, it's about power. Because a man who doesn't need love is a man who can't be manipulated. He doesn't fear loneliness, so he can't be guilted into compliance. He doesn't crave validation, so he can't be bought with empty praise. He becomes, in the truest sense, unbreakable. Dostoevsky's The Idiot features Prince Myshkin, a man so pure, so detached from worldly desires that the corrupt society around him can't comprehend him. They call him an idiot. But in reality, he's the only free man among them. Modern men are starting to embody that same unsettling purity. They're not playing the game, not because they can't win, but because they've realized the game was rigged from the start. And here's where it gets even more radical. When enough men wake up to this truth, the entire social order begins to crack. Governments panic about declining birth rates. Corporations scramble to market new forms of male consumption. The media pumps out frantic articles about the loneliness epidemic. But these are just the death throes of a system that depends on male desperation. Because the truth is, men aren't lonely, they're liberated. They've traded the roller coaster of romance for the steady, unshakable strength of solitude. And in that solitude, they're rediscovering what it means to be truly alive. But this isn't the end of the story. It's merely the prelude to something far greater. What happens when an entire generation of men stops seeking love and starts building empires instead? This is where we'll reveal the blueprint for the new Renaissance and why the future belongs to those who walk alone.
Let me hit you with a historical gut punch. There is a moment in history when the old world dies and the new one is not yet born. We are living in that moment. The institutions that once dictated a man's worth, marriage, corporate loyalty, societal approval, are crumbling. And from the wreckage, a new kind of man is emerging. Not the lovelorn romantic, not the corporate drone, not the politically correct puppet, but something far more dangerous. A man who belongs entirely to himself. Dostoevsky once wrote, "To live without hope is to cease to live." But what he didn't say, what he couldn't say in his time, is that the most potent hope is not the kind given to you, but the kind you forge yourself. Modern men are discovering this in real time. They're not hopeless. They are hope itself. Because when a man stops outsourcing his purpose to love, to bosses, to societal expectations, he becomes something rare and unstoppable, a sovereign entity. Take the story of Ernest Shackleton, the polar explorer who led his men through the harshest conditions imaginable. Stranded in Antarctic ice for 2 years, he never lost a single crew member. How? Because he understood a fundamental truth. Men will endure any hell if they believe in the mission. The modern man's mission is no longer to impress women or climb corporate ladders. It's to conquer himself. And in that conquest, he finds a strength no external reward can match. This isn't theoretical. It's happening right now. Look at the rise of digital nomads, men who've abandoned the 9-to-5 grind to build empires from laptops. Look at the explosion of male-focused communities, from Stoicism groups to biohacking forums, where men share knowledge, not complaints. Look at the underground fitness movements, where men train not for aesthetics, but for unbreakability. These aren't trends. They're the early tremors of a seismic shift. History repeats itself, but never the same way. The monks of the Middle Ages retreated to monasteries to seek God. The samurai isolated themselves to master the sword. Today's men are retreating too, not to escape the world, but to remake it in their image. They are the modern-day ascetics, trading fleeting pleasures for lasting power. And the world doesn't know what to do with them. Because here's the truth the elites don't want you to know. A man who cannot be controlled cannot be stopped. Governments need obedient taxpayers. Corporations need passive consumers. The media needs addicted viewers. But the new man? He needs none of it. He reads books instead of headlines. He invests in skills instead of stocks. He built his body instead of his social media presence. He is, in every sense, anti-fragile. Dostoevsky's greatest warning was that without suffering, there is no meaning. Modern men have taken that warning and weaponized it. They are choosing their suffering, cold showers, pre-dawn workouts, brutal self-honesty, because they understand what the masses do not. Pain is the price of power. And once paid, that power cannot be taken away. But this isn't just about individual transformation. It's about what happens when enough men wake up. When the collective male consciousness shifts from seeking approval to asserting sovereignty. That's when empires rise. That's when revolutions begin. That's when history bends. We are standing at the edge of that shift. The old masculine ideals, provider, protector, performer, are being replaced by something simpler and far more potent: the creator, the conqueror, the king of his own mind. This isn't a rejection of love. It's something far more radical. The realization that love, like everything else, is a choice, not a necessity. And that realization changes everything. Because when men no longer need, they can finally build. This is not the end. It's the beginning. The question is no longer why men are walking away. It's what they will build in the silence. The answer, as always, is yours to decide.
If this series cut through the noise and spoke directly to that quiet, knowing part of your soul, if you felt the unsettling weight of truth in every word, then you're already part of a different breed of men. The kind Dostoevsky wrote about. The kind who see through the illusions most will spend their entire lives chasing. This isn't just content. It's a wake-up call, a manifesto, a rebellion against everything society has tried to condition you to want. And if you've made it this far, it means something in you is already changing. That spark of recognition, that's your higher self breaking through. So, here's what you can do. Subscribe, not for me, but for yourself. Because what's coming next will dismantle even more of the lies you've been fed. This is just the surface. Drop underground in the comments. One simple word to separate those who get it from those who never will. Let's see how many real thinkers are actually out there. Share this with one man who needs to hear it. Not the weak ones, not the hopeless ones, but that one guy you know who's ready to wake up but just needs the final push. This movement isn't built on views or likes. It's built on men who refuse to keep playing a rigged game. Men who choose peace over chaos, strength over validation, truth over comfort. The question is, which side of history will you stand on?